These last couple of episodes have been nothing short of awesome to craft for you. I am a big history and music buff, so really coming up with condensed takes on what has happened to the CU industry and male CU in the past decade has been pretty fun for me. Last episode I briefly touched upon EMU and Weiss-Kreuz's influence, Quartet Night and Trigger's big number ones on Oricon's charts, plus I talked about male CU finding their own voice and analyzed the misconception that both CU and fans of 2D music projects have, that every project is a winner, which unfortunately is a lie. For this episode I will pick up where I left off, which was on male CU finding their own voice. I find that topic to be really interesting as most of us don't really notice those nuances. At least if we are not that big of a fan of a certain CU, or if you don't really care for those details when listening to music. Unfortunately, or fortunately, my ears are trained to pick up the most unnoticeable nuances. It's a perk of having been a music reviewer for a decade, as well as having a background composing and writing music on guitar, piano and drums. So these kinds of things seldom go unnoticed to me. I will return to the CU finding their own voice topic in a couple of episodes for a more laid-back and smoother episode focused solely on it, so don't worry. Today I will dive a bit into the singer-songwriters that are leaving a mark in the industry, the proliferation of 2D music franchises, and the rise and fall of CU music-related franchises. This episode is brought to you thanks to PM, the hand that feeds HQ's B-Rank CU supporter on Patreon. You can also be a producer for CU Lounge by subscribing to ranks B or higher on the Hand That Feeds HQ's Patreon page. Work alongside me to craft 4 or 8 episodes of this podcast centered around a theme or themes you want to explore, provided that those are male CU and music related. I would love to have you on board, so make sure to check the Hand That Feeds HQ on Patreon. Link is in the description. A note that, just like previous episodes, this is a digest episode including a whole lot of information that I will explore in later episodes of CU Lounge. Rest assured that if something went by too quickly for you, I will return to some of the topics in extended episodes focused solely on those. Now, let's kick off this episode of CU Lounge. Welcome to CU Lounge. I am your host, Vanessa, and today we continue to explore the history of male CU music in the industry and a new topic, music franchises. But before I kick off that topic, let's explore the creatives among male CU. Most people out there don't really care if it's their favorite CU composing or writing their music, they just want to listen to their favorite singing. This is valid, however, if you go a step further, you'll start appreciating when your favorite male CU starts writing his own lyrics, composing his own songs, or even doing production of their own releases. That unique touch and vibe you get when listening to something that your favorite male CU created is quite different from listening to a generic release that was written and composed by someone else. Why is that? Because self-composed or self-written releases are personal. Male CU share, even if not intentional, what they actually feel or think about something. It goes beyond saying that they are shedding that professional layer they used to cover themselves in and strip or bare their emotions. Music has these things, and I have come to find myself supporting more those male seiyuu that go out of their comfort zone and share their compositions and lyrics, putting the effort in to craft something unique, something truly theirs, as opposed to those that have a big generic production behind them. Not to say that there isn't any quality in the music by those male seiyuu that do not compose nor write their stuff, it simply hits me differently. And with a lot of male seiyuu making their debuts in the music industry, it's no wonder that some are trying to set themselves apart from the pack by showing that they are, indeed, unique and don't need a composing and lyricist's team behind them to sound just as good, if not better. When I mention creative solo artists, there are 4 names that need to be mentioned, as they do both work as lyricists and composers. The best example out of them all is Toshiyuki Toyonaga. He plays a wide variety of instruments and has music production knowledge on top of him composing and writing his own material. He basically does it all. Then we have Soma Saito, that took over his career in 2018 and started to be the main creative brain behind his solo work, providing both music compositions and lyrics for all releases since date. And now is mentioned in an interview that he even wants to learn mixing and arranging to be even more involved in his music. Shotaro Morikubo has been doing it almost since his solo debut, well in the mid-noughties. He writes his lyrics and often composes his songs. And must I remind you, is the only male seiyuu as a solo artist that fully embraced hard rock. Shugo Nakamura has been writing and composing more as of late, and it seems that in the future he might be completely in charge of both writing and composing for himself. His compositions are mostly acoustic, which is a good change from all other names featured on this section. Now, when it comes to bands, I have to mention at least 2. Gran Rodeo, who write their entire stuff. Kisho does his lyrics, Iizuka and the rest of the band compose the songs. Old Codex work in a similar way. Tatsu often writes lyrics and composes music, and York is the main lyricist for the band. These are just some of the names. The list actually goes on, and I will talk more about them in future episodes. Why do some male seiyuu want to be involved in the creative process? First off, they earn more in royalties if they completely own their lyrics and compositions. Then, because most have a passion for doing it. Perhaps they always liked writing or have always composed songs for themselves. Regardless of the reasons, you can tell that they love what they do just by how much they want to be a part of the creative process. Of course, not all seiyuu are, even those that may want to, because of packed schedules, for example. Those seiyuu that do not partake in the creative process might be the ones that I mentioned before, that are just singing to cash in on something, or they prefer others to do that job for them, as they only sing as if it is just another job. It is awesome, though, that nowadays it's getting more and more common for male seiyuu to want to be involved in their music. It paints those seiyuu in a different, unique color for themselves, which make up for a more colorful and varied music industry. The rise and fall of seiyuu music-related franchises. Over the past decade, fans of 2D idols and 2D music projects have had their share of happy moments. The number ones by Quartet Night and Trigger, Utapri's domination in the early 10s, Hypnosis Mic domination in the late 10s, But unfortunately, not everything has been this happy-go-lucky. There have been multiple music franchises with Male Seiyuu at their core that have disappeared, others that were discontinued, even when they had what I thought was success. Music franchises and 2D idols or music have been a thing since Utapri turned into a massive success in the early 10s. So, the proliferation of Seiyuu music franchises has only one culprit behind it, the Utapri franchise. Yeah, you're going to listen to me talking a lot about Utapri because of them being the inspiration for many of the music projects we now have. But back to the topic at hand. Seeing the success that the franchise experienced, it is obvious that other creatives in music labels would also want to have their own groups or projects experiencing that. They thought it was easy. Therefore, mistakenly, thinking that all Seiyuu 2D music projects are instantly met with success, some decided, and yet still decide, to launch the weirdest and most incomplete music projects, thinking they can cash in quickly on the trend. Then we have those that genuinely crafted something with care and quality, but unfortunately, their project does not attract many people because it is not cliched enough. Cue the canon or leader of the franchise having red hair, cue every group having a stoic member or a member with a really irritating high-pitched voice, or a franchise counting with a really bright group, a sexy group, and an extremely popular group, plus a dark, gritty, from the hood kind of rival group, and so on. Or the Seiyuu lineup lacks popular or star Seiyuu, or, and this one doesn't make any logic because of the art. Guys, we listen to music, right? Why being so picky about the character designs when what you could be doing is to check the music Seiyuu had much work to pull off really well for you? Some of what I consider to be top 2D music franchises, taking into account sales and popularity, include Utapri, Idolish 7, Hypnosis Mic, Idolmaster Side M, Ensemble Stars, Dear Vocalist, Dig Rock, A3, B Project, Hanadol, and Tsuki Pro Tsukyuta. Aside from the Hypnosis Mic, Dig Rock, A3, and Hanadol franchises that are fairly recent, all others have managed to survive the test of time. Why did these projects manage to survive the test of time? This is due to a mix of elements, and there are no two franchises sharing the same reasons behind their success. And note that the elements that I will mention are but a fraction of all the reasons that might be behind their success. Some of the reasons I believe are behind the success of those projects mentioned earlier include novelty of the concept, a good story, a star-studded cast, character designs, music, good management and marketing, fan support that makes up for lack of publicity. Most of these reasons are self-explanatory, but I will dive a little bit into each. Novelty of the concept. This happened with Utapri in the early 10s and recently with the Hypnosis Mic franchise in 2017. Utapri was the very first project that featured, in a rather solid way, the concept of a 2D pop idol group. It wasn't what the series intended to do, but it ended up being its route. Hypnosis Mic was the very first hip-hop project that aimed at showcasing the talents of male Seiyuu in this field. It no longer is the description of the project that changed in 2019 to an original character-driven rap music project, putting aside the good focus that was being put on male seiyuu. But let's not dive into that. A good story. A good story, often relatable or devoid of over-the-top crazy shenanigans, ends up being a rarity. Good stories with good character development, no plot holes, a few twists and turns, and a decent amount of foreshadowing will make a project stand out. I believe this is the differential that makes Idolish 7 stand out from other 2D idol projects, putting them in a league of their own. They avoided going the superficial and glitter plus fan service filled route of most 2D idol projects and instead tackled a darker, more relatable and yet mostly unknown side to the idol life. A star-studded cast. As self-explanatory as it gets, some projects like to stock up on popular male seiyuu to bring their individual fandoms into the projects. Hello everyone, today I bring you the star-studded music project starter kit. And in this kit we have Takuya Eguchi, Toshiki Masuda, Soma Saito, Shota Aoi, Makoto Furukawa, Toshiki Toyonaga, and Shotaro Morikubo. You may add some sprinkles of Ken and Yuichi Umehara for bonus good looks to up the Ikemen rating of the cast. This doesn't happen, but it is almost like this. It must be. I actually like most of the seiyuu I mentioned in that brief acting section, but it is ridiculous how projects don't try to fit vocals that complement each other instead of just going for the most popular seiyuu that may even not work well sonically when in a group together with other male seiyuu of similar singing tones or styles. As you can tell, this may or may not work depending on the project and its quality. Character designs. I leave this to your judging. I don't follow music projects based on the visuals and I don't understand it, so I won't be diving into it as it really is highly subjective. The music. Not everyone likes the same music genre, that's a given. Most people, however, like pop music. That's why there is a proliferation of pop music projects as opposed to rock, EDM, jazz, and hip-hop projects. The music has been a differential for franchises such as Hanadol, Dig Rock, Skipro, and the Dear Vocalist franchises. Although there are no definitive franchises that manage to avoid being generic at times, these four at least are the most efficient in avoiding falling into the generic pit. Good management and marketing. Successful projects aren't only because of the cast, music, or their novelty. Sometimes there are projects that have an edge over others due to having a well-oiled marketing machine behind them. This is the case with Hypnosis Mic, Utapri, and Idolish 7. The Hypnosis Mic have a massive marketing team in King Records and Evil Line Records, same as Utapri with King Records. Idolish 7 does have the massive Bandai Namco Entertainment behind them. Fan support that makes up for a lack of publicity. I see a lot of these with Hanadol's fans. Hanadol is a franchise that I have been following closely since its inception in 2019, much due to the fact that I tend to like the music coming from Movix projects. Anthos, the sole group in the franchise up until recently, have been nothing short of amazing and impressive since debut. They have a unique sound and their lineup is really good. The only problems are, they do not perform music that is massively trendy, they are not really an idol project, like for example B Project, Ensemble Stars or Side-M are, and don't have a massive marketing team behind them. And that is where Hanadol's fans have been pretty awesome, sharing the music around, commenting on the project, writing about it, encouraging others to share and learn more. And this is in a genuine, come check it out, they have good music bases. Not like fans in other music franchises that are genuinely obnoxious in the way they represent the franchises they love. Hanadol's fans made the franchise rise in popularity with their music videos hitting hundreds of thousands of views pretty quickly. That success is yet to hit their physical sales, but it is already bearing fruit on social media. After this talk about success, you ask me, what about the other franchises that, despite their success, ended up being scrapped? Good examples of these are Yumero Cast and Bandiarose. I am still gutted about both because not only these franchises had good music, but also their games were among the best. Yumero Cast was a victim of Sega's well-known bad management of their IPs. In case you don't know, an IP is an intellectual property, meaning the original project created by Sega. The project lives on in China, but no one outside of the country can play it. Bandiarose did have the clout as an awesome rock music project and had one of the toughest yet most rewarding game experiences, but it was not popular because most people don't like rock, some fans were put off by the game's difficulty, there are no idols in it, there is no star-studded male seiyuu lineup, and it wasn't making Sony and Aniplex any money in microtransactions. Unfortunately, both met their ends that we all know, both games ceased distribution in Japan, and the groups in the franchises are, for all I know, practically disbanded, with some exceptions. As you can see, over the past decade, fans of 2D idols and 2D music projects have had their share of happy moments, but that wasn't without luck mixed with other elements, namely big budgets. Those with big budgets but with no direction ended up failing to be any good. A good example of that is the Dynamic Court franchise. Those without big budgets not falling into cliches at times or grabbing every single popular or trendy male seiyuu there is often meet a bitter end. However, what makes 2D music franchises rise and keep up the momentum is a mix of exposure, marketing, and the cast's popularity. And ultimately, what keeps those alive is nothing more than money. If the project stops making money, it ends, no matter how popular, good, or how impressive the cast is. Money is what makes 2D music projects survive. Wow, that was pretty intense. I wasn't expecting to cover this much in this episode, but I am pleasantly surprised I managed to. As you can tell, I only scratched the surface of these topics and will for sure return to most of them in the future. What do you think makes your favorite 2D music project unique? What must a 2D music project have for you to decide to follow and support it? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the Hand That Feeds HQ's weekly male seiyuu and music related content, hit the subscribe button. I'll return next week with another episode of Seiyuu Lounge. Thank you for listening and see you around.